Hello, brubs. We're back with the ending of popular entertainments through the ages. This is, I believe, the last chapter. We are working. Oh, what's going on here? Why is it sticking together, buddy? I don't like that. Fuck is that? 5. A very interesting description of a performance at the new Holborn Amphitheater, a circus, which was opened by Messengers Sharman and McCollum in 1867, was written by a visitor in the same year. Up in the gallery, we are not a dignified audience, and we enjoyed ourselves immensely. We laugh till the tears run down our faces, and stamp and kick our admiration as if we wanted to knock the boards in and pay a precipitate visit to the Chinons, I don't know how to say that, in the balcony. A good many of us are children and throw ourselves back in our seats and actually scream with delight. Who shall sing the praises of the clown? How clever he is, to be sure. How madly he dashes his flannel fool's cap onto the carpet, and with what gusto he runs amongst the attendants. Tumbles friend and foe head over heels, tears up the paper discs, and stuffs the fragments into his pocket for a handkerchief. How thorough is his enjoyment of mischief, and how impossible it seems for him to keep quiet for a moment. Then, what side-splitting jokes he makes, not all of them new, perhaps, but still given so heartily, and at a circus, nobody expects much in the way of novelty. We are quite satisfied with the old standard Joe Millers, and when the indignant ringmaster threatens to break the fool's head, how vigorously we cheer the time-honored answer that it won't much matter, for it's cracked already. Then, when we are told that Quakers ought to go to the Friendly Islands, and misers to the Guinea coast, and blind people to sea, and bachelors and spinsters to the United States, we are as pleased as if it was something quite new, and not a medieval joke, that has done duty in a more or less modified form at every circus performance ever holden in town or country. What's up, bruv? But our great delight is when the ringmaster. This is popular entertainments through the ages. Basically about the circus, pantomime, the stage, Punch and Judy, all of that. And I'm almost done with it. But our greatest delight is when the ringmaster is told that after all, there isn't much difference between the military and millinery, and that if he will look just over there where the soldier sits, he will see the military and millinery companions in arms. Then when the clown wants to enlist and the sergeant pulls out a shilling on the spot, our ecstasy is unbounded. Hands, mouth, feet, umbrellas, and walking sticks are all brought into play at once. And some of us really believe that the fool has had a very narrow escape indeed, and that if Mr. Deacon hadn't pulled him away at the nick of time, he would have been marched off and made to fall in and behave himself if he could, as the awkwardest of the awkward squad on the drill ground. But the madcap is so uproarious that he must be taken in charge. A policeman, helmet and all, rushes to the front and tries to clamber over the paling. Helped to the top, of course, he tumbles head foremost into the ring, and wild is the joy of the gallery. But he is up in a moment and makes a dash at the culprit. Some of us think that he is one of the company dressed up, but others, and by far the greater number, believe that he is a genuine member of the force just called in from Holborn. Addlepate twists first to the right, then to the left, throws himself flat on the carpet, and over goes the officer, according to precedent. The attendants dash forward, but the fool is up and off again. He makes a successful grab at the pseudo policeman's helmet and runs with it round and round the circus. If anyone gets in his way, down he goes and round the circus. Down he goes. Oh, wait. The audience can't control its enthusiasm. It shouts and shouts again and has to stand up to shout more effectively. The thief bursts from the ring. The policeman is after him and not alone, though most of the attendants are too blown to join the hunt. A moment's pause, and there is a loud shout from the gallery. Madcap looks over and asks his pursuers where they are now. But, clever as he is not to have it all his own way. The policeman is upon him, and a dreadful struggle begins. First one is uppermost, then the other. Round and round they go. If they don't mind, they will be over. The policeman trips. He is pushed half over the edge. A last convulsive writhe, and away flies the dummy into the circus. The attendants catch it and take it out quickly, and the children want to know if it's all real, and almost cry as they think that the poor empty-handed fool will be hanged for murder. Though, indeed, there is a chance of his stringing up Jack Ketch instead, bonneting the jailer, and being helped off by a sympathizing mob. Quiet being restored, a gentleman of majestic demeanor and fashionably attired enters the arena on horseback and proceeds to enlighten the audience as to the meaning of the term haut ecola. I don't know how to say that. What's that? Haut ecoli? In plain language, to make his horse dance. One of the most remarkable features of the performance at the amphitheater is Eric's aerial act, which, though wonderfully clever, is rather disquieting to those who have not fed so full of horrors as to want something very spicy, indeed, to stir their interest. At a breakneck height from the ground, there is a horizontal wooden bar hung by ropes from the ceiling. The performer uses it as a swing, but as he does so with folded arms and balanced on one foot, or on his knees, the danger he is in may be guessed. However, if we raised our voice against what seems a mad risking of life and limb, probably we should be told that the feat was an easy and safe one, comparatively, and be accused, as our betters have been, of trying to take the bread out of a hard-working man's mouth. So we merely wish M. Irick success. His boldness deserves it, but it is painful to think that the labor market is so overstocked that it should be worth a man's while to run such risks night after night for a few guineas a week. There can be little doubt but that exhibitions of this kind, whose attraction is their danger, are mischievous, because the interest they excite is morbid. But to say so would merely be to go over old ground to no purpose, and to advance arguments that would be met, not seriously, but with derision, in anger, or with stopped ears. The stout gentleman to our right declares that Mr. Bradbury's jockey act is the cleanest thing he has seen for a long time, and indeed, when a man can throw himself towards a horse at full gallop and get a firm seat on its back, and do the same thing successfully 3 or 4 times running, he certainly does deserve a compliment. To wind up part 1, we have a necromantic fairy ballet, which would hardly have passed muster at Her Majesty's Theatre in the days of the famous Pas de Quatre. So far as scenery is concerned, it is not worth much, but it introduces Mr. C. Laurie as a winged demon of baneful and surprising activity, who is never happy but when tumbling in and out of walls, trees, and trapdoors, dropping off the roofs of houses, and turning up with a good deal of noise wherever he is least wanted or expected. He has an embarrassing fondness for handling people goblets for handing people goblets of wine, which turn into bowls of liquid fire, tossing flames right and left, bristling with fireworks, licking red hot pokers, walking on his head instead of on his heels, and doing duty as a sort of amateur Catherine wheel. The plot of the ballet is chastely simple. It will be guessed, in fact, when we say that the dramatis personae are a lovely maiden with conventionally short skirts, a young chamois hunter, a grotesque suitor with a carroty wig and a huge spyglass, a comic black servant called Mumbo Jumbo, a heavy father who opposes and is ill treated and thwarted by everyone, the demon aforesaid, and a benignant fairy who glitters most charmingly in the limelight. There is more tumbling than dancing and much more hubbub than music, but it is a great success and delights the children immensely. After the ballet, there is an interval of 15 minutes, the overture to Masaniello is played by the band, and then les nains are brought in. These little gentlemen are about 3 feet high and have heads quite a dozen times too big for them. Their dress is clerical, being a black stuff gown and bands. The one is evidently a collegiate don, the other a representative of the dissenting interest. The countenance of the former, though by nature severe, is tempered by a bland smile. The tip of his Roman nose is red, and there is a sleek and satisfied look about him, suggestive of a sinecure and good commons. His less favored friend has a round and fiery face, green goggle eyes, scanty yellow hair, and a mouth that he keeps wide open as if he was afraid of choking. The gentlemen take snuff together. The band plays the cure as they trip to and fro, bowling and smiling most amicably. The four Bronettes at Bertram at W. Mills's Circus, Olympia. Hagenbeck's Lions. Of course, this one would have to be that way. The Deblars at Bertram W. Mills Circus, Olympia. The Bedini Tafani troupe at Bertram W. Willis's Circus, Olympia. But strange to say, the more they dance, the taller they grow. At last, instead of dwarfs, they are giants. But the phenomenon, so far from discomposing them, seems to make them more and more benignant, more and more lively. They smile and wriggle their long, thin bodies as if shaking off a world of cares with every fresh caper. The children are half amused, half frightened. The monsters are so strangely lissom. Eel-like, they wriggle along the ground, twist their heads under their legs, and dance as composedly as ever. They knock their heads together, they spin round and round, crane over to the back rows of the pit, and one of them, growing horizontal from his legs upwards, tries to kiss a little girl in the distance. A lad of the roughly humorous kind seizes the intruder by the hair and threatens to pull the whole concern to pieces. There is much laughter, much shrieking, a bobbing of heads, a succession of blasts from the band, and amid general applause, the giants sink back into dwarfs again and trip from the circus. The Delavani family are a troupe of clever acrobats, some of them mere boys, one quite a child. They seem to have practiced their bones into India rubber and to have muscles of iron. They have brought the art of throwing somersaults to perfection and will turn 30 or 40 in unbroken succession as they move from one side of the circus to another. The youngest of the troupe stands on his head on an inverted bottle balanced on his father's chin, and every one of the family can perform feats that betoken years of practice and something like genius, if we can use the term in reference to deeds purely muscular. When the elegant lady with the chignon, long white satin streamers, and airy attire has jumped through hoops and thrown herself into all sorts of ingenious and uncomfortable positions on horseback, The proceedings are brought to a close by the ascent of a fiery steed, said to be a Russian thoroughbred, to the top of a gigantic stepladder, where, to quote the program, he finishes his performance at a great altitude, amidst a profuse display of fireworks. Then down comes the curtain. There is the usual rapid turning off of the gas, and as we rush downstairs, we agree that we have spent an uncommonly pleasant evening. And this, too, all for a shilling, comfort and fresh air included. 6. In addition to establishing himself in Astley's, the most famous of all circus buildings at that time, Sanger opened circuses at the Agricultural Hall, Islington, and in almost a dozen provincial towns, including Birmingham, Manchester, Glasgow, Aberdeen, Bristol, and Plymouth. As a partner, he had his brother John. The first show at Astley's was Lady Godiva, a spectacular pantomime in which both the stage and the ring were brought into use. A great part of its outstanding success was due to the introduction of all sorts of wild beasts. Gulliver's Travels was even more spectacular. On the stage during one scene were 300 girls, 200 men, 200 children, 13 elephants, 9 camels, and 52 horses. The interstices in this spectacular mass were carefully filled with ostriches, emus, pelicans, deer, kangaroos, Indian buffaloes, Brahmin bulls, and lions. It was necessary for Sanger to assure the authorities that the stage was in no danger of collapsing under the enormous weight. In 1893, Sanger disagreed with the authorities regarding the rebuilding of Astley's, which they said was in a dangerous condition, and accepted the check, which was offered to him by the ground landlords, the ecclesiastical commissioners. When he left the famous building, it was demolished, and since then, there has never been a permanent circus in London. The circus toured the country for many years and featured the reproduction of stirring incidents of real warfare, a popular form of entertainment in which no circus is ever likely to be able now to compete with the military tattoo at Aldershot. In 1905, Lord George Sanger, then an old man, retired from the business and sold the property to various purchasers. Some years before, he had very amicably separated from his brother John, who ran a show which still belongs to the family and which keeps in front of the public eye the famous name of Sanger. 7. A word must be said about the Olympia Fun Fair. It is so intimately associated with Mr. Bertram Mills's great Christmas circus that he organizes them both, and visitors to the circus enter it through the fair. The Fun Fair has taken the place that was once occupied by Bartholomew Fair. It is more decorous, but in essentials, it is the same. Once a year, it is visited by rich and poor, young and old, and in the fair or in the neighboring circus, it is possible to see many of the identical types of entertainment that drew the crowds to Smithfield. The roundabouts of the earlier fair are represented by successors who are gorgeously attired but who cannot hide their humble parentage. The fire eater has been seen at both places. The albino girl of the modern fair reminds us of the beautiful Albaness of Bartholomew Fair. The snake charmer, sword swallower, midget woman, fat man, and tall man of Olympia were all popular many years ago at Bartholomew Fair. Nor have the freak animals lost their attraction. Those who enjoy comparing the popular taste of today with that of the past may care to peruse the following extract from an advertisement. It appeared in an English periodical in the summer of 1931. Wanted. A few early dates for the greatest attraction ever offered. Leo Scott presents the original John Ellis of Rochdale. Late public executioner for 23 years. carrying out from start to finish the sensational demonstration of a complete single-handed execution, the most refined execution act that has ever been placed before the public by the original retired hangman, the moneymaker that showmen need not be afraid to book. Tom Matthews, who succeeded and imitated Grimaldi as the pantomime clown. Creepy looking fucker. Oh, there's only one page of that. 8. The story of the present day English circus, like many another of high class entertainment, introduces us early to Mr. C.B. Cochran. In 1906, he ran a circus at Olympia. Since the building had been opened in 1885, the only other visitors had been the Paris Hippodrome Circus, Barnum Circus, and Barnum and Bailey Circus. In 1913, Mr. Cochran secured the Christmas tenancy and presented Hagenbeck's Zoo and Circus under the name of the Wonder Zoo and Big Circus. Neither part of the entertainment belied its proud title. Among other interesting features, the zoo contained 500 Barbary apes, which, uncaged, ran about at apparent liberty, and were separated from the spectators only by a trench. The circus program was the finest that had ever been staged in a single ring. The qualification single being necessary because some foreign circuses run programs in 3 rings simultaneously. The show was a great success, but it was not the direct forerunner of others. When the following Christmas arrived, the world was at war. The first year of peace found the circus business in an unflourishing condition. Olympia, however, was occupied in 1919 by Wilkins and Young's Circus. In 1920, Mr. Bertram W. Mills leased the building, and every year since then, his circus has been one of the finest things which comes with the Christmas season. It has invariably been opened in state by the Lord Mayor of London, and the connection between the Fun Fair and Bartholomew Fair is thus marked in another very interesting manner. The success of Mills's circus has not been a fortuitous happening. Although, unlike most other proprietors, he was not born to the showman profession, his family had a carriage and harness business. He therefore grew up among horses. As is the case with most boys, he was fond of the circus. Before the war, his business took him to continental and American horse fairs, and he had an unusual opportunity of seeing the best circuses in the world. Add to an innate faculty of showmanship the love and understanding of horses, and to both add a thorough business training. Then add considerable wealth. These were parts of his equipment when he adopted the hazardous profession of showmanship. It is easy to understand the feelings of old established circus proprietors when Mills entered the business. No one likes to find his field of operations suddenly invaded by a rich outsider. However, the popularity that was secured by Bertram W. Mills's circus gave the entertainment a high status, and its unflagging lead has encouraged other circuses to raise the standard of their programs and improve the accommodation for spectators. The result is that the English circus, which Mills found in low water, is riding on top of a wave of prosperity. To indicate the general position, some of the following details have been extracted from reports in the World's Fair, the Showman's periodical. All of them refer to a particular week in May 1931, and business is good everywhere. The Blackpool Tower Circus is about to open its doors for the summer season of 5 months. There will be some beautiful examples of high school riding. A dazzling finale, the Cascade of Gold, has been planned. It introduces the Golden Wonder, a sensational continental novelty, and a flying ballet above an artificial lake with 1,000 fountains. It may be said that this famous circus was founded at the end of the last century when the tower was opened. The floor of the ring is convertible in a few minutes into a lake. allowing the exhibition of attractive water spectacles. Carmo's Circus is round about Bradford and will be settling down in Blackpool for the summer season. In the Isle of Man, or making for it, is H.G. Bratt's AI Circus. Chapman Circus and Zoo is in the neighborhood of Hereford. Barnett's Canadian Circus and Horse Show is round about Alcester. I don't know how to say that. Butler's Circus is in the Marlborough area. Sanger's Circus is to be found in the region of Wolverhampton. Hundreds are being turned away in Jersey, where the attraction is Stevenson Brothers World Travel Circus from the Royal Agricultural Hall. This shows, says a writer, that if you give a real good show, business is to be done if there is any money about, and pictures won't harm. A good circus. Mills's Circus proved that years ago at Olympia. The lesson is being learned by other proprietors. Pinder's Royal Circus is in Cornwall. Among the artistes, as it is an old-style family circus, are Captain Tom Pinder, who gives a performance with a group of forest-bred lions. 4 of them recently escaped and brought Pinder's bravery to public notice. Edward Pinder does trick riding. The sisters Pinder are dancers and acrobats. Master Thomas Pinder gives an equestrian display. Among the other items of the program is a performing baby elephant. A young lady appears in a tableau representing events in the life of Joan of Arc. In Cornwall also is Broncho, Bill's, and Bailey's combined circus. It includes a member of the distinguished circus family, Master Robert Fawcett, who is a skillful jockey. He was recently challenged at 100 pounds aside the audience to select the winner, but the challenger failed to appear. Bostock and Wamwell's combined menagerie and circus is in Devon. Among the attractions are a large Burmese elephant that plays a tune on bells, a monkey that walks on the tightrope, and Vassia, an anatomical wonder, whose weird contortions evoke applause. Bertram W. Mills's Circus and Menagerie is also in the Southwest. Only in its second tenting season, it has already revolutionized the status of the circus in the provincial areas which it has visited. 9. In dealing with Bertram W. Mills's Circus at Olympia and tenting, it is not proposed to hurry round the place looking at everything and seeing nothing. It is better to see a few selected things clearly than to glance hurriedly at many things. The illustrations will be allowed to tell what they can of some of the many interesting turns. The text will concentrate upon items which are not to any appreciable extent duplicates of aspects of popular entertainment that have been dealt with already in this or any other part of our story. One of the most fascinating places at Olympia is just behind the blue curtain that is drawn aside when any turn is going into or coming out of the ring. Often there is someone peeping through it, for the artiste and other circus folk are greatly interested in the performance. Loitering, of course, is not permitted, but those who have just come out or are going in have a good excuse for standing where they can see what is happening in the ring. Stable boys stand ready to take the horses to their stalls. Over their costumes, the artiste wears such coverings as a dressing gown or a raincoat. Clowns are the most regular frequenters of this part of the circus, as the intervals between their appearances in the ring are not very long. Some of them may be talking to the young ladies whose turn comes next. 1 or 2 of the girls are probably doing a few steps of a dance solo, for artists are not allowed to disport themselves together outside the ring while they are on duty. The artistes who may happen to be standing there scatter when horses, mules, zebras, or any other animals are passing in or out, for the animals are high-spirited, and as a rule it is part of the effect that they should go in, or come out with a rush. When they come out, attendants catch hold of the bridles. One may occasionally see a man hanging on desperately while a horse, mule, or zebra, to take them in the ascending order of their refractoriness, drags him wildly along the passage. Lions, tigers, bears, and other wild beasts do not use the wings, but go along a railed-in corridor which leads from the back of their cages to the ring. If they are asleep when the time has come for them to get ready for their turn, the trainer rattles an iron bar across the front of the cage. 10. What is a circus without the clowns? Asked the writer of a program note. The questionnaire, like Pilate, would not stay for an answer. He was not jesting, however. Clowns are worthy of serious attention. There are two kinds of circus clowns. The more important form an act of their own and are termed entry clowns. The others, known as fill-in clowns, keep the spectators amused while the ring is being prepared for the next turn. At Olympia, the D division is clearly defined. When the circus is on tour, however, some of the fill-in clowns do a complete act. It is therefore only by seeing them in a tent that one can realize their full capabilities. The visitor who makes his first entry into the dressing room, which the fill-in clowns share in common, probably receives his initiation into the clowning profession. A clown makes up the novice's face more or less elaborately. He is then free to wipe off the grease paint with the usual cloth, dipped in lard, Vaseline, oil, olive oil, or some similar substance. He is also free to look around at his leisure. Around the walls are such properties as dickies and ties all in one, hats and collars, dress suits, balloons, huge masks, trombones, and wigs. All of these belong to individual clowns. Some of the properties are very distinctive. There are, for example, a huge mask with electric eyes, a hat that flies into the air, a mop of flaming red hair, which can be made to stand on end, and a complete Mickey Mouse disguise. In the middle of the floor at Olympia stands a table with a long two-sided mirror at which the clowns whiten their faces, pencil nostrils and eyebrows, dab red on noses, cheeks, and foreheads, build up grotesque noses, and in other ways transform themselves into the amusing figures who tumble about in the ring. The door opens and a distinguished-looking gentleman enters carrying an attaché case. After addressing various clowns in various languages, he enters into conversation with a Russian in Russian. Then he begins to make up as a clown. The Russian, a gloomy clown, has finished making up and is smoking away the time, but not his melancholy. This room is in the balcony, and it is used only for dressing. During the comparatively lengthy periods in which they are not required, the clowns occupy another room near one of the entrances to the ring. Here they rest and change their costumes, wigs, boots, and so on in readiness for their next appearance. It is nothing less than a crime to be late in entering the ring. One practical joker among the clowns therefore grabs and runs away with the pair of trousers which a half-dressed clown is about to pull on. He wants me to be late, cries the victim. Baptista Schreiber at Bertram W. Mills' circus. The Wallendas at Bertram W. Mills Circus, in one of the most thrilling acts of all time. I won't be late. He seizes a pair which are hanging spare among the many articles on the wall. Another clown is practicing standing on his head. One is moodily complaining to a colleague that he does not photograph well. It transpires that because of this lamentable fact, he has just missed an opportunity of seeing himself on the picture page of a newspaper. Who would not be sorry? Clown boys in, comes a shout from some of those who have been standing in the passage. With a medley of cries in various languages, they all rush into the ring, including in good time the clown whose trousers had been stolen. In the ring, they justify by their diversified performances the preference which some of them show for the term all-round clowns instead of fill-in clowns. They are not mere fools who knock each other about, Most of them have served a long apprenticeship to one or more branches of the circus profession. As riders, acrobats, trapezes, stilt walkers, contortionists, globe walkers, jugglers, and so on, some of them have topped the bill. They have become clowns for various reasons. Their particular style of act may have gone out of favor, and injury may have made it impossible for them to do their act to perfection. Advancing years may have had the same effect. Perhaps they have found that clowning offers the best scope for their all round skills as circus artistes. These things apply also to the entry clowns. The four Bronettes, for example, have at various times presented acrobatic, dancing, and trapeze acts. Clowning enters into other turns besides those of the clowns themselves. Harry Sloane, the stilt walker, asks another clown to throw him up a bottle of whiskey as he is thirsty. He gets drunk and staggers about the ring, seeming as though at any moment he will topple over. Tommy Baker, part of the time, is a riding clown. He cuts capers on the back of a horse, falls to the ground, and barely escapes as the horse comes careening round again. Finally, he rides round the ring on its quarters, holding on to one of the two other riders. He reminds us that the first circus clown introduced by Astley was a riding clown. Tommy Baker, dressed as a clown, pretends to get bowled over by the gray mare and falls into some gentleman or other in the ringside boxes. He then kisses him in a grand manner, and jumps back into the ring. This piece of business gets a good laugh. One evening, the gentleman into whom he pretended to crash and whom he then kissed, said with a smile to a companion, "That is the first time I have ever been kissed by a man." The clown learned a few minutes later that he had kissed Lord Grey. On another occasion, the same artiste departed from his usual practice and kissed the young lady, not because she was charming. She was a very superior young lady and had been passing loud and disdainful marks about the various turns. Taking it over with the other artiste, Tommy Baker decided to put her in her proper place. She was rude to him as to the others, so he fell into her and atoned for his clumsiness by giving her a drawn-out kiss. The audience, who had become tired of her manners, saw the joke and roared. Rawr! The story of the sudden popularity achieved by Tommy Baker is one of the romances of the English circus. He belongs to an old circus family. This is section 11, by the way. And riding came as naturally to him and his two brothers, and to his two brothers as walking does to anyone else. None of the boys remembers a time when he could not ride, nor can their father recall his own first lesson in horsemanship. The father toured Ireland for many years with a small circus of his own, similar to numbers which are still on the road in this country. Having crossed to England a few years ago, he pitched his tent at Willesden Green. Tommy was then 14 years of age. Among the visitors to the small tent was a lady who greatly admired the boy's performance. She asked his father why he was not appearing at the Olympia Circus. "Some day he will, I hope," was the genuinely modest reply, "but he is not good enough yet." This closed the incident so far as the father was concerned. The boy had been complimented, and his father was pleased. That was all that had happened. An evening or two later, however, a Rolls Royce drew up at the door of the small tent, and from it alighted three gentlemen, one of whom the astonished father recognized as Mr. Bertram Mills. They took seats in different parts of the circus. As the boy rode around the ring on the gray mare, his father watched them anxiously. He saw them raise their thumbs to one another. Mr. Mills asked him to come to his office the following morning, and there he found a contract ready for his signature. He signed it. Thus it came about that Tommy Baker, called by Mr. Mills young Steve, received a huge salary, appeared at Olympia, and made his name. 12. Circus life is fascinating. As with entertainments in general, however, there is a noticeable and understandable tendency for people who are giving a picture of it to paint it mainly in couleur de rose. But entertaining the public is not a pastime, it is an exacting profession. This makes the spirit in which the work is carried out all the more creditable to those concerned in the various spheres of popular entertainment. Few outsiders have ever seen the all night removal of a huge modern tenting circus. By looking at such a removal, we shall see something that is of intense interest. We shall also be reminded as we go along that if circus people are happy, it is not because their life is all play and no work. This applies to popular entertainers in general. Before dealing with the removal, it may be worthwhile to go back for a moment to one which took place at the end of the 18th century. The conditions today are very different, but the spirit is the same. A showman met Saunders, the proprietor of a traveling circus, packing up his traps in London. The booth had been standing for 3 or 4 days. On the boards in front of the painted advertisement was a slim young fellow with marks of paint on his face. He was tying up some of the canvas on which were painted what the showman, telling the story, described as the wonderfulest characters and curiosities of the exhibition. When the visitor had shaken hands with Saunders, the latter turned round to the youth, who had just thrown a somersault behind his back, and said, "I say, you, Mr. King Dick." The boy was continually acting to his friends the part of Richard III, for his name was Edmund Kean. "If you don't mind what's your arter, and pack up that air was wan pretty tight and nimble, we shan't be off before tomorrow, that we shan't, and so you mind your eye, my lad." When a huge modern circus is being pulled down, just as when Saunders' booth was being removed, everyone has to pack up pretty tight and nimble. The fear still being that we shan't be off before tomorrow. The operation of pulling down the circus, transporting it to the next town, and there building it up again takes place as a rule between the Saturday evening performance in one town and the Monday afternoon evening or the Monday afternoon performance in the new locality. This remark does not apply to the general run of circuses, which seldom pitch for a complete week in any one town or village. We are dealing with the largest circus on the road, that of Mr. Bertram Mills, for there the process of removal is the most complicated and enthralling. The opening has been advertised extensively and seats have been booked. It is therefore of the utmost importance that at the appointed time, in spite of all the foreseen difficulties and the innumerable difficulties which may possibly be encountered, the band over the entrance to the tent shall commence playing, and the spectators shall take their seats and find everything ready for their entertainment. From start to finish, therefore, the work is carried out at top speed. Everyone in the circus, from the director to the lowest paid member of the staff, lends, if necessary, a willing hand. Even before the doors are open for the last performance, the removal has begun. The flags of all nations which decorate the interior of the tent have been packed away. The animals that are not appearing in the final show have been taken to the station and embarked on a special train. They will be joined in due course by the other animals, but by most of the artistes and by properties which are too heavy or bulky for carriage by road in the severity or so powerful, motor vans which are owned by the modern representatives of Saunders. As soon as the band has gone into the tent for the performance, and even while spectators are still arriving, workmen begin busily to dismantle the facade. During the show, therefore, to the sound of cheerful music, the job and others proceed simultaneously. Gangs of men, many of them engaged temporarily, are working on various parts of the ground, which, let us say, is a recreation park on the outskirts of the town. One lot are raising by a few inches some suspended electric cables near the exit from the enclosure so that when the time comes, the vans may pass out without plunging the place into darkness. The electricity, it may be said, is generated by the motors of the vans. At the booking office, carriage, a young lady is dismantling the ledges of the ticket windows. Groups of laborers are shifting in sections the windows. Groups of laborers are shifting in sections the rails which enclose the pitch and are piling them on lorries. A small, powerful tractor resembling a tank is pulling one of the vehicles into the road where another tractor is waiting to take it to the station. For many hours to come, while the stars are appearing, while the night is growing cold, while the sun is rising above the housetops of the nearby town, the zealous gur of the small tractor will seldom be out of our ears. Immediately, an artiste's turn is over. He or she finished the packing of trunks, which has already been started. The lady trapezist, for example, is standing in the open air near the ropes of the tent, putting costumes into a trunk wardrobe. Her daughter, about 10 years of age, is holding a candle, for the corner is dark. A clown, no longer recognizable as such, is carrying a heavy case on his back from the caravan in which the clowns dress to a pile of trunks that is lying ready for transport. Men on various jobs are walking about with lanterns. A cannon shot in the tent is heard. It is followed in a few seconds by applause. Those working outside know that Leinert has been fired from the cannon and has landed safely into the net. This is the last turn. They hear the music of the national anthem, and after the international anthem, Auld Lang Syne. The spectators pour out, and the lamps of bicycles, motorcycles, and automobiles begin to add their lights to those of the arc lamps, the lamps in the road, and the now shining street lamps of the city of God. There is something solemn about the scene. While the people on foot or with a conveyance are crowding through the gates, circus horses mingle with them, for not a minute is to be lost. A long or short job of some kind or other is now found for almost everyone connected with the circus. The members of the band, having stored away their instruments for transport and taken off their uniforms, help with the removal of the seats and benches. The rattling and the cracking of timber fills the vast emptiness that is the tent. Some of the women artistes take the satin numbered covers off the reserved seats and store them in large boxes. They arrange them neatly in lots of five so that they can be readily unpacked and placed in their proper order when the seats are ready for new spectators. Other women fold up the seats and lean them in stacks against the tent poles for removal by workmen. The trapezist, her omnipresent little daughter, and her husband, who does balancing tricks on the pole, which she supports on her shoulder in a double turn, are taking down the trapeze and rolling it into a bundle. With iron poles and heavy hammers, circus artistes are levering apart the several sections of the side of the ring. They are supervised by the ringmaster, who swears at a clown worker in German, and a moment later says in a kindly tone to one of the troop of dancers, "Watch your feet, my dear." This ringmaster is the old one, not his successor. He is only traveling with the circus for a week or two to give his son advice and other assistance. Tonight is the last time he will ever take part in the work. By about 1 in the morning, the interior is stripped clean of the ring, the seating, and the apparatus. Still in its place, however, facing the desolation is the cannon. The side poles are now released by some of the workmen and laid on the ground, and other men carry them to the lorries. The storm broke? Kinda looking like it. Alright. Finish this fucking book. Oh, shit. Bundles of straw are brought in by the workers, who lay it carefully over the ground inside the tent. Put some more here, cries the director of the whole circus, indicating a spot with his foot. Nothing escapes the attention of the director, who is here, there, and everywhere, doing this, that, and the next thing. He spreads the straw over the uncovered spot. Then he notices a piece of wood lying on the ground, lifts it, and throws it to a workman. The whole area is soon covered with the straw. It has been placed there in order to protect from possible injury the expansive canvas top, which is about to be let down. A slight hole made by a stake or anything else that may happen to be lying on the ground might readily lead to the ripping of the canvas in a strong wind or a heavy rainstorm. Sounds like it's raining. It is easy to understand the need for careful handling, as apart from the effect of a ripped top upon the performance, this section of the tent is worth several £1,000s. The top is in several parts which are laced together and attached to a strong iron ring around each of the two lofty king poles. Ropes are pulled, and then one witness, the finest sight that can be seen at any time in a circus. Gently from the sky, the broad expanse of canvas descends to the earth, bulging as it comes and forming exquisite curves. On the ground, in the light of the low-lying arc lamps, it looks like a broad expanse of virgin snow. Against the starry sky are silhouetted the forms of the lofty king poles, now seen in all their majesty and casting on the canvas lengthy shadows, which remind one of the shadows of bare pine trees cast on snow by the low sun of a morning in winter. The 6 sections of the canvas top are rolled up by some 40 local laborers who work in gangs under the supervision of clowns or other members of the staff. Each section, on an average, weighs about a ton, and this is increased in wet weather, when tons of water are collected and willy-nilly have to be carefully packed with the canvas and laboriously transported for miles. One of the supervising clowns is a German, and a cheery ex-soldier, not knowing German but feeling that it is appropriate to address him in a foreign language, says humorously, when told to do something, "Très bon, governor, my army," remarks the clown pleasantly as he leads his men to where another job is awaiting them on the canvas. Lighting a cigarette, the old soldier says, "Promenade, Avak, General," and then from afar comes the voice of the director, "Don't smoke when you're working on the canvas." A little later, a bonfire being warmth to a far corner of the ground, there being safety for the tent, if not comfort for the workers in distance. It blazes for hours, consuming paper, cigarette packets, orange peel, chocolate boxes, pieces of scrap, wood, and other rubbish. For it is intended that the circus, which cannot fold up its tent like the Arabs and silently steal away, shall at least depart without leaving any avoidable traces. The holes in the ground are carefully filled with earth, and the waste straw is neatly heaped into 5 large stacks, which give the ground the appearance of a cornfield. About 3 in the morning, the lion tamer, a German, who was supposed to be in his comfortable bed at the hotel, appears on the cold scene and explains in broken English that he can never sleep while the tent is being pulled down. 6 o'clock finds signs of life in the caravans, owned by some of the artistes, and others, the majority who are staying in the hotel or rooms, begin to make their appearance, although most of them go direct to the train. Carts from the town arrive to take away the heaps of straw. 3 schoolboys gather gleefully round the bonfire, which still contains sufficient life to make it a veritable find. Several older people come to see the removal of the circus and are surprised to find that it has gone. All gone save 2 or 3 vans, and soon these two are on their way to the new pitch. Some of the artistes gave 2 performances the previous day, worked hard all night, are driving their own caravan, and have in front of them a full day's laborious toil in the building up again of the tent. They will shortly appear as full of gusto as though they never did anything else but perform in the ring. And so we leave them, clowns, acrobats, jugglers, contortionists, animal trainers, and other descendants of the Roman mimes, Teutonic gleemen, French and English jongleurs, and a long line of popular entertainers. Their wanderings, hardships, indomitable spirit, and love of their profession were noticed at the very beginning of our inadequate story. It is fitting that we should think of these things while the procession is winding its way along the road. And in case anybody wants to reference anything, I will briefly show the pages of the index. At least you can find out which section they're in, if you care, which nobody does. Son of a bitch. Open, please. There we go. That's all, bruvs. What do you got now? That was almost an hour and it felt like about 6.